really thankful to the entire NEF Law College, specifically to the Barua sir, for inviting me and giving me this platform for delivering my thoughts on COVID-19. In fact, I tell you, just 2 months back when this pandemic was at the peak, so we at Delhi University organized a webinar in which it was an interdisciplinary dialogue that the COVID-19 and the challenges to the climate change, what will be the post-recovery challenges and all, joined by the professor from IIT Kanpur, IIM Lucknow, the climate management, the climate technology, then the people from National Biodiversity Authority, and then the other authorities, sustainable development authorities also. Considering, see, from the input we received from that webinar, we are also very soon launching a edited book on that, the legal challenges to the climate change post-recovery. I request all of the faculties, those they are joining it, I will forward the book proposal to the Barua sir, to the authorities. If you could contribute to that, that is one thing. So I congratulate the entire authorities of the NEF, the principals, the Anureka ma'am, the other authorities, the registrar and the management authority for inviting me. And see, let me begin with coming on to the topic as such. I hope in Assam it's raining. Raining and the might be drizzling or downpour. In NCR also it's a drizzling. So see, this is happening. I think we can, those they are up having a elder age, they can recall it. Initially, it was a time when it was routinely happens. The monsoon routinely used to come, routinely used to go. There was retreating the monsoon. From 3rd June, it used to touch the Malabar, and then now it's come and goes up to the Himalayas, and then they retreat it. So there was a natural pattern. There was a natural pattern of the raining. Even the flood was identified. Even, see, I tell you, the Assam, the state of Assam, the state of Bihar, the few other states, they are very prone to the floods. Right now in Goa, not only in, basically in the Assam, equally to the state of Bihar and few other states, we are facing this, the double barrel attack on us in the form of pandemic as well, in the form of this flood. And I easily can understand what's going on in the entire state of Assam. We are facing the double problem. So for authorities, the district level authorities, the state level authorities, the disaster management authority, in collaboration with national management authority, the kind of problem which we are facing to manage the these two national committee. I would like to be say that this is human generated, or the calamity which we are facing in the form of COVID-19. So with this introduction of and the background, with the permission of the Anureka man, I would like to start my debate by sharing my screen. So with your kind permission, may I share my screen, ma'am, so that this is a little bit. So I hope my screen is visible to all on the screen.
Not yet, sir.
Just a minute, ma'am. So now it's visible.
Yeah, yes, sir, it is visible. Yes.
So, as we can say, anyway, so now it's a full screen appearing on the screen, visible to all. I am audible to all. So if
yes,
this is the go with the formal presentation. Yes, ma'am. So as you can see, the today's topic, the COVID-19 and climate change, the legal issues and challenges. So Anureka ma'am, please let me know if in case meanwhile my voice is going to be down or a little bit patchy or something sort of that. In case, yes.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Sure. So see, we will in this coming 35 minutes, we will try to understand what is climate change, what is the impacts of the climate change, then what is the impact on India, what is the impact on the state of Assam, and then how it is correlated with, is there any connection between the COVID-19 and this climate problem of climate change. And apart from this, what is the international regulation of the climate change, problem of the climate change, so far as law is concerned, because climate change is a multidisciplinary problem, so it requires interdisciplinary approach. So climate change is an economic problem, climate change is a political problem, climate change is a, you know what, technological problem. It's a problem in engineering side also. So the researches are going on over the problem to tackle the menaces of the climate change, why it is happening, how it is happening. So the coming 35 minutes, we are going to be discussed with all these things. So with this, let me begin with this. What is the climate change? So be very practically, I will not go into the definition of deeper sciences and all these things. For a law purpose, we are all, I think, from the realm of the law. So be very common understanding. As you can see my screen, there is a cycle that is going on. You can see the sun, you can see the less snow and ice throwing, perform post change in the plant life cycle, warmer oceans, rising sea level, demand corals, damaged corals, stronger storms, changing in rain and snow patterns. That is what something related presently with the state of Assam also. See, we are facing the another problem, that is flood problem, because of this changing rain pattern. And the rain pattern has been as the storm and overall climate change of all. So see, to be very simple, the weather of a particular atmosphere, the average weather of a particular atmosphere is called climate change for the with the definition which we are moving on. So any significant change in the measures of a climate lasting for an extended period of time. So climate is an average weather of a particular place. So what is an average? Average means throughout the year, what is the average weather of the state of Assam, and then accordingly, and particular place we are talking about. So that is why I am giving the number of the example of the state of Assam. So any significant change in that average weathering, that is called climate. And if that is extending to a larger period of time, is called climate change. So change in the average pattern of average weathering is called climate change in a very simple format. Now it includes the major changes in the temperature, in the precipitation, or in the wind patterns, among other effects. So if our precipitation pattern is changing, our temperature is changing, the overall temperature is changing, if the wind patterns are changing, so basically the climate is changing, occurs over a several days. It takes the time. It do not happen. The change in the climate do not happen in 1 day or in a 1 year or a 2 year. It happens because of the endogenic and exogenic changes in the weather over the period of time. So with this short introduction of the climate change, as I can show you what will be the adverse impacts and how the cycle goes on, you can look onto the screen. With this short introduction, the conceptual introduction of the climate change, I will move on. The climate change is affecting our local communities. See, even the state of Assam is having the place with a lot of local communities. We have diversity, we have multi cuisines, number of things. So therefore, not only the state of Assam, we have the number of states with where we have the diversity at the local level. So we have to understand that why, how, and why this climate change, whether they are changing the pattern of the local communities also, or the local. So here when I am using the term local, so local means I am moving from international to the national and to the state level. So and as well as to the the local communities also. So these problems, which you can see in the form of various colors, the environmental impacts in the navy blue, in the blue format, in the health impact in the red format, in the economic impact in the green format. So the impacts of, you can see in the blue format, more heavy rain, that is equally important for us considering the nowadays the weather going on. Rising sea levels, then I know that the state of Assam is very close to the sea level. So we will talk on the sea level also. The warmer temperatures, area heating up, then the extreme weather, then the bad air quality. In red zones, you can see the bad air qualities, more hot days, health changes in the environmental harms, diseases, warmer temperature. And then in a green zone, you can see the extreme weather like winds, economical changes, food crops can be damaged by heat, drought, and insects. Then the in a blue zone, you can again see the hotter and dreamer summers in the mountain areas. So see, friends, exactly the entire purpose of this slide is to highlight you the various adverse impacted in the form of three categories. That is the environmental impact. What will be the impact of this climate change over the environment? What will be the impact of this climate change over the health in a red zone? And what will be the impact of this in the economy also? Because see, now we are going to be in the post-recovery phase of the COVID-19. So I hope so that we are all in a safe and healthy manner, and we will be able to tackle this problem very soon. We will be able to come with the vaccine for this. But till then, and we have a number of stages of the lockdown already. So the post-COVID economic recovery. So there will be definitely the economic impacts going to be happen on this. As you can say that even in a normal situation, the climate change is related to the certain economic aspect in the green zone. So I think with this slide, I'm a little bit able to introduce you the various impacts on the various segment of the climate change. If at all there will be a doubt, we will be taking it on the question and answer. I will share this slide with Anurekha ma'am with you all, so don't worry. Let me come with another screen. That is the climate change and the variability of the trends. So I can see the cropping pattern. Not exactly I can discuss right now because of the paucity of the time. So cropping pattern in the state of Assam, the rice pattern, the other patterns of the other crops. I'm not going to that detail, but you see the impact on pests and diseases, impact on crop production, impact on natural resources, that is water, and then the overall precipitation. I was talking about the pattern of precipitation, so by farmers. Then the cropping scheme adaptation and all. So the cut it short, the point which I want to convey with this presentation is that apart from the environmental aspect in the previous slide, apart from the health aspect, apart from the economic aspects, this climate change has a direct nexus with our crop production, our crop pattern, and other things. So that's why it becomes very, very important with regard to the states like state of Assam, where we have a good number of agriculture products, variety of agriculture products. So the well-established cropping system. So what will be the impact on this cropping system in this short format? So because we have to discuss the law, so therefore I am skipping this. In case any doubt, we will discuss on the question and answer format. So now coming to the this legal aspect. So for introducing the entire legal framework of the climate change, the approach which I will follow is from the coming to the international level and then going to the national level as well as the regional levels, what the arrangement legal frameworks we have. So friends, as you know that in fact those they were a little bit having interest in environmental laws and the development of environmental laws. So in 1972, the Stockholm, we have started the first conference on the environment and human development, that is UNED. Then subsequently in 1992, of course in the first Stockholm conference, our late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was the first person who head up the nation, addressed it. We all remember that. But the debate on climate change, friends, in the realm of environmental law started internationally in year 1992. That was the Rio Summit, in which it was basically the UN development, UN conference on Sustainable Development, UNSCD, in which there were 3 major decisions has been taken. That was it was called also the Earth Summit. So as a part of Earth Summit, see, the background was, I tell you, the conference took place in 1992. The conference, UN conference on sustainable development, took place from the 4th June to 6th June. But before that, there was a intergovernmental negotiation committee that in New York, sitting at the New York from 30th April to 9th May. They have passed a draft resolution of UNFCCC, and they have proposed that it should be put into the coming Convention on Sustainable Development in June. So therefore, in this background, in this pretext, the Convention on this UN Framework on Climate Change Convention has been put for the signature at the summit at the Rio de Janeiro from 3rd June to the 4th June. You all know on 5th June it was open to be signed for the parties. That is why we are celebrating the World Environment Day on 5th June. I will not go into that detail, focusing on climate change. So it then entered into the force from 31st March 1914. So from 21st March 1914, it come into the enforcement after a sufficient number of countries had ratified it. We all know that international agreement generally becomes enforceable when it's ratified by the parties, minimum requirement number of parties. So now the objective of the UNFCCC was that to stabilize the greenhouse to stabilize the emission of the greenhouse gases. And to reduce the concentration of the greenhouse gases in the environment and to the level is permissible, and the objective of the objective of this universal concentration in the atmosphere at a level that is permissible, and to reduce the dangerous anthropogenic interferences within the climate sciences. I was talking about, I have already described you what are the dangerous interferences in the form of crops, environmental and other things. So this was the overall objective of this conference. This framework set up a non-binding limits. So be very clear, I think we are all having this conceptual understanding that, see, the international agreements happen to be binding and non-binding. So be very clear, this was a non-binding optional convention to be signed by the member countries. So, and even after signing, it was not the binding commitments. Even the member countries is signing, it was not a binding commitment. So we will see what were the other things in that. I would like to be very quickly focused to you the Article 31. See, parties should act to protect. I am making very clear that it was a non-binding commitment, and even it was not compulsory to the member parties to be binding. We will see the first binding commitment coming in the form of Kyoto Protocol, and after that how it has been diluted, and then the Paris Agreement. So it was neither the convention was a binding one, the provisions of the convention, nor the mechanism was binding one under the convention system. The Article 31 of the convention provides the common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities, meaning thereby the member countries, it will be the common responsibility of the all member countries to mitigate to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions, to mitigate the circumstances that are changing the climate, but with differentiated responsibility. So common, I told you, it will be the common responsibility, but differentiated, meaning thereby if it's a developed country, annexure 1 country, the annexure 1 country, the convention categorized the countries into the annexure 1 country. We will see the screen on that. So annexure 1 countries, that is the developed countries, are the advanced economics. They will have a more responsibility. They will be having a more responsibility whereas in compared to the developing countries as well as the least developing countries that are put into the non-annexed countries. So there are 3 annexures we will talk to on that. For right now, this is just an introduction. So common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities. So meaning thereby there will be a common responsibility of all the member states, but with the differentiated responsibility, meaning thereby the developed countries will have a more responsibility, developing and least developing countries will have a less responsibility. And then the respective capabilities also, see, within the countries, even a developed country or even their responsibility will also be proportional to their respective capabilities. So you cannot put, you know, the same level of responsibility to a country like Germany or the economic like Germany with a responsibility with a country like USA and UK. So there is, I tell you, the population size, the economic pattern, the economic stability. So therefore, respective capabilities also. So common but differentiated responsibility with respective capabilities. And then the developed country parties should take the lead. So 3 principles: common responsibility, differentiated responsibility, respective capabilities, and then further the overall responsibilities of the developed countries to take the lead to reduce the greenhouse gas, to mitigate the circumstances that are changing the climate and all that. So with this, now moving on further to the major objective, that is Article 4, subclass 7 of this convention. See, it is very specifically saying the extent to which developing country party, it's talking about the developing countries parties responsibility. I told you that the developed countries will be the overall responsible for it. They will take the lead. Article 4 subclass 7 talks about the responsibility, the nature of responsibility of developing countries parties, and that will be effectively implement their commitments under the convention. And it will depend upon the effective implementation by the developed country parties of their commitment under the convention related to the financial resources and transfer of technology. So cut it short, I tell you, the responsibility under the convention of the developing countries and least developing countries was dependent upon the performance by the developed countries. I have earlier mentioned you, the developed countries was supposed to take the lead, supposed to transfer the technology, supposed to establish the, you know, the technology that reduces the greenhouse gases, and to come up with a better research. These were all responsibility of the developed country, and they were not supposed to be only do into their within the geographical limit of their country. They are supposed to transfer this technology. They are supposed to assist the developing countries with other economic easements, so far as the climate change, technology, engineering, and the other equipments are concerned. So therefore, the responsibility of the developing countries was depend upon the performance of the developed countries. See, friends, why I am saying you this more focusing the responsibility of developing and LDCs countries are that India comes under the non-annexed country, non-annexed country. Neither under the annexed one country nor under the annexed 2 countries. It's a non-annexed country. So the responsibility of India, of course, we are doing far better than much expected at the international level so far as climate change is concerned. But I am saying India was, I tell you, the first country developing country who first find the requirements report under this convention. We will talk on the Kyoto Protocol and all that. The cut it short point is that the primary responsibility was the of developed countries, and the responsibility of the developing countries and the other LDCs was depending upon the how the developed countries are cooperating with them, how they are doing their responsibility, how they are taking the lead, how economic assistance they are providing to the developing and LDCs, and all these things. So therefore, developing countries were not the prima facie responsible, and even then they were responsible according to their respective capabilities. Now, see how this convention administered to itself. So under the convention, a conference of parties that every year regularly meets. you might have been heard that COP this year the 26 was supposed to be take place in the UK also, but it could not took place because of this climate change problem itself. I tell you, the COVID-19 apprehension of COVID-19 was one of them. So now it has been postponed to the 2021. The COP26 will. So far the 26 meetings of COP had been took place. See, the COP conference of parties as nothing else. The parties that have initially joined or even subsequently they have joined this convention. So they are called conference of parties. So every year annually, to overall looking to submitting the report, to evaluating the report submitted by the member countries and the other requirements, they sit on every year to a particular place. So since 1995 onward, it's regularly going on. Now COP26 was supposed to take place this year, but it has been postponed. The particular COPs will be important, like COP3, COP2, basically 1 to 2 that laid down the foundation stone of Kyoto Protocol. We will see Kyoto Protocol. As you can see on the screen, from 2005, the conference have also served as the meeting of parties of the Kyoto Protocol. So if you will see the ongoing conferences of the climate change UNFCCC, so you will find that COP26 as well as CMP number this. So basically the COP is also works as the CMP under Kyoto Protocol. We will come on to the Kyoto Protocol. So cut it short, the point is that the entire convention, this UNFCCC, is being administered and managed by this COP, and every year this COP took place annually, most probably in the month of December. This year the COP26 was supposed to be take place. As you can say that this Paris Agreement, you might be knowing, that took place in COP21. So we will talk about the Paris Agreement also. So basically in this COPs, the regular COPs, the Bali Action Plan will be coming, the Copenhagen Accord will be coming, the Paris Agreement will be coming, this Kyoto Protocol in 2005 will be coming. So basically this COP annually meets, and that is called the COP number of particular year. So this year the COP26 was supposed to take place, but it was deferred because of this problem. Now see, this was the administrative system of this conference. The conference comes with another, I tell you, scheme with regard to the educational. See, the climate empowerment education, action for climate empowerment, that is ACE, is a term adopted by UNCFE in 2015. That is when we have adopted this Paris Agreement in the same COP, and it was promised that we have a better name from the topic than the Article 6. And what it refers to, the Article 6 of the convention, in the focusing on 6 priorities areas: education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to the information, and international cooperation on these issues. Why I have taken this initiative and this particular Article 6 on this? Because see, basically NEF Law College, Guwahati, is basically doing something in the form of this campaign, I tell you. So basically this NEF, I must congratulate the NEF College Authority. They took this initiative. So India is also under the obligation. Of course, it's not binding, but to to educate the people, to educate the, run the training awareness, to run the public awareness, to run the public participation, to public access to the information, international, all these to the local communities also. So generating the awareness of the climate change, its impact, its legal position, is also a non-binding duty of the member countries, and because of course India is a party to it. So therefore in this form the NEF Law College is doing this initiative that's well covered under it. So we can document it for this. I request the principals for that. Now further, this empowerment, climate empowerment, calls on the government to develop and implement educational and public awareness programs. So therefore, the principals can think of to approach the NPCC and the other authorities, the Environmental Ministry, to approach for the funds in this head also, because the government is under obligation, and every year the budget allocates a particular, the environmental ministry allocates a particular sum of amount for awareing this programs, educational campaigns, the seminars and all that. And throughout the state of Assam, we can with the help of law student, we have our legal aid committee. I think I was going to the website, have a good legal aid committee. So through which we can go to the community outreach program, we can generate the other public awareness campaign on the climate change. And of course, I told you the mechanism under that. See, as you on the screen can see, I was talking about the classification of the parties and their commitments. I was talking on the previous slide. Here you can see the convention, how classify, and according to their classification, their responsibilities are different. Common but differentiated responsibility. So you can see on the screen the globe, and on the globe you can see the green areas. So that are Annexure 1 parties. So those member nations, they are Annexure 1 parties. Their responsibilities is more. They are the developed countries, I tell you. See, exactly the convention do not go by this economic concept of developing the classification of countries based on this developing, developed and LDCs. It has its own classification based on Annexure 1, Annexure 2, non-annexure party and observer status. So there is a little bit difference, I tell you, this economic classification of the countries and this classification of countries based on their climate situation under UNFCCC. So Annexure 1 parties are the developed countries more or less, and they have a overall the responsibility to take the lead so far as the mitigating the circumstances of the climate change and the reduction of greenhouse gases are concerned. Annexure 2 party are comparatively less responsibilities. The time will permit, I will show you that slide also, that what's the specific responsibility of Annexure 1 country and Annexure 2 countries. Now the non-annexure parties. So as on globe you can see the entire this south part of the America, the South America, entire Africa, even in Asia, and all the certain part of Eurasia, even in India being one, they are all the non-annexure parties. As you can see here also, the Australia is an Annexure 1 party. Now you can see the third category, that is observer status. We have talked about, see, the certain international organizations has been given the observer status. So they have to only observe. They have no direct linkage with this. They are not, European Union is also an observer status in this. So there are a number of international organizations. So this was basically and according to their color, according to their commitment is different under the conference. See, after the signing of this UNFCCC, parties to the NFC have conference, like conference of parties. I about introduce you to discuss how to achieve the TT's aims. At the first conference, that is COP, first party decided that the aim of Annexure 1 parties sterilizing their emission at 1990 levels by the year 2000 was not adequate. So therefore I tell you, see, in the UNF first COP, it was decided that the measure which we have fixed, see, initially it was fixed that to reduce the emission level to the level of 90s, but subsequently it was realized that it is not sufficient. Then what to do? So therefore they have decided to come with a protocol, a binding protocol. See, before the Kyoto Protocol, it was not binding mechanism under the convention. So that is why, according to the background of COP1, the COP2 onward, it was decided to come with a binding protocol, and that is why we at Kyoto, we come up with a binding protocol. Binding means the measures that will be adopted will be binding on the member countries, and the Kyoto Protocol has 2 commitment periods. The first was from 2008 to 12. The second was from 13 to 20. So number of countries, see, almost many countries, they have submitted their report, the binding report. See, the requirement was different as per the annexation in 2018 to 12 commitment period. We all know that in 2012, the Canada was the first country who has withdrawn from this protocol, subsequently followed by the United States of America. But of course, I tell you, the second phase was not joined by these countries, but still there are countries, specifically the European countries, they are completing this commitment, the second period commitment, that is 2013 to 20. Of course, now it is not binding. The second phase is not binding because of withdrawal of the Russia, the United States of America, then this Canada and all. The second phase was not signed, so it could not become binding. However, the first phase was binding and the reports were submitted. Now the second phase was absolutely a discretionary one, but the few countries, including India also, we are regularly submitting our reports that we are complying with the second phase of the Kyoto Protocol. US, I told you, the US and Canada has not ratified it. So even though they were the Annexure 1 countries, so all Annexure 1 parties, excluding the US, have participated in the first Kyoto Protocol commitment period. 37 Annexure 1 countries and the EU have agreed to second round of Kyoto targets, and including India, and we are following that. Now, Bali Action Plus. Ma'am, can I know that what will be the time limit to because we have to be reserved 15 minutes for question and answer session. So do we have a time like 15 minutes more to sum up?
Yes, please carry on.
Ma'am, so can I know how much time I have so that accordingly I will move on? Yes, I am audible, ma'am. Osni ma'am.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible. You are audible, sir.
So exactly, ma'am, I want how much time I have to, so that I can move on accordingly. What I will be doing now, that 15 to 20 minutes I will be finished, and then we will go by question and answer session. So Bali Action Plan. So I will be.
Yes, sir. Yes, no problem.
Yes. So as a part of the, see, I tell you this Bali Action Plan was, don't be Kyoto Protocol, Bali Action Plan, the Copenhagen Accord, the Cancun Agreement, the even Paris Agreement, these are all will coming under this framework convention in different conference of parties, so different years. So they are not out of the UNFCCC framework. They are within the UNFCCC framework. So every year, like I told you in 1997 Kyoto Protocol, in the COP 2 to 3 come up. Now the Bali Action Plan in 2007, that year COP, it was added. And what was it? I tell you, it was a part of an action plan adopted in 2007. All developed country parties have agreed. You already know the classification, developed countries, developing, Annexure 1 and all that. They have quantified emission limitation and reduction of. See, before this, there was not any quantified emission limitations on the parties. It was agreed at the Bali in the form of this action plan that the all developed countries will agree on the quantified emission limitation. There will be the prefix quantity of the emission level, which every country has to be reduced it and to submit the report in the next COP, while ensuring the compatibility of the efforts among them, taking in account to difference in their national circumstances. So according to their national circumstances, there was a binding quantified emission limits for the developed country, Annexure 1 countries. However, what was for the developing countries under Bali Action Plan? The developing countries parties agreed to nationally appropriate mitigation access. Not much. See, basically this nationally appropriate mitigation action is now in a different form converted into the Paris Agreement. I hope you can differentiate the responsibility of developing countries under Bali Action Plan and the developed countries and developing countries. For developed country, it was qualified emission limitation and reduction objective. They have to be quantified. They have to take that this is the target which I am going to achieve in next year, and that was binding on them. However, for the developing countries in Para 2, you can see it was the national appropriate mitigation action. So the countries has to be decided according to the, it was left to the developing countries to decide, and accordingly they were free to, as they can do to reduce this. So in fact, they were not, in a way, they were, that is not binding on them. And of course, supported by, see, the responsibility of developing countries will depend upon their technology, financing, capacity building, the other verifiable manners. So now 42 developed countries have submitted mitigation target to the UNFCCC Secretariat with regard to the Bali Action Plan, and 57 developing countries and the African groups has also submitted this NAMA's commitment to the Bali Action Plan. So this was with regard to the Bali Action Plan. Now the Copenhagen Accord and the Cancun agreements, these were the, see, meanwhile we will be focusing Paris Agreement, that's the major achievement. Meanwhile, these were the few subsequent developments important. So the accord was, this Copenhagen Accord, I tell you, does not specify what is the baseline for the temperature target. See, pre-industrial level, or it will be the level of 90 level. See, the entire UNFCCC prescribes that the coming years you will reduce either the 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius, either the pre-industrial level or the level of 90s level. But this Copenhagen Accord, because it was objected by this certain member countries that the level as well as this binding commitment. So that is why Copenhagen Accord come with the alternative solution to the countries those they have objected the prefixing of the measure of this, whether it should be pre-industrial period of 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius, or whether it should be 90s. So therefore, as a part of the accord, 17 developed country parties and the EU have submitted mitigating targets. As of 45 developing countries parties, some developed country parties have noted the need for international support in this plan. So it was subsequently joined by certain countries. As a part of the Cancun Agreement, developed and developing countries have submitted mitigation plans to the UNFCCC, and these plans are compiled with those made as a part of the Bali Action Plan. So basically, this Copenhagen Accord and the Cancun Agreement was little bit reducing the criteria of the Bali Action Plan. I told you under the Bali Action Plan, so to summarize this Bali Action Plan, Copenhagen Accord and Cancun Agreement, I told you in Bali Action Plan, for developed countries, it was binding imitation, they have to prefix and they have to notify to the UNFCCC Secretariat, and accordingly they have to submit the report. For developed countries, it was the NAMA. Developing countries, now this two agreements have little bit reduced the criteria, because see, the developed countries have surrendered. They said it is not quite possible to this framework, because Bali Action Plan was also having a time frame. So within this framework, we are not able to be achieve this target. So that is why and in fact, they have even come with a threat that they can withdraw from the entire convention. So that is why Copenhagen Accord was agreed. It was a win-win situation was created between developing countries and developed countries. Basically, countries were opposing strongly, because see, on one hand, you are not fixing the responsibility of developing countries. You are giving them the full liberty. Their national measures, they can do it. However, you are fixing for developed countries. So to sort out this agreement, the Copenhagen Accord as well as the Cancun Agreement has reduced certain criteria for the developed countries as well as for the developing countries, and they have been requested to submit as required by the Bali Action Plan in the coming year. Now this comes to the Durban Platform for Enhanced Action, and that was the basic platform under which this Paris Agreement 2015 was launched. So we have to see the Paris Agreement, the binding agreement 2015, which we have now, was basically started at the Durban Platform for Enhanced Action in 2012. In year 2011, I tell you, the parties had adopted this Durban Enhanced Plan, and they have agreed to develop a protocol, the another legal instrument or an agreed outcome with the legal force under the convention applicable to all parties. See, it is saying that it will be applicable to all parties, not so therefore a common enhanced program and action program that do not differentiate the developing countries and the developed countries. So there could be a common binding action plan for all. Of course, the developed countries has been agreed to give the certain relaxation to the developing countries, but so far as the responsibility is concerned, they said that there should be a common binding responsibility for all. And what was that? See, at Durban and Doha, the parties agreed with the grave concern that the current efforts to hold global warming below the 2 or 1.5 degrees Celsius relative to the pre-industrial level appear to be inadequate. By the time I tell you the research, the environmental research, the research in the climate change, that has reached to a conclusion that what was the target of this Bali Action Plan, Kyoto Protocol, that was that to reduce the 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius below the pre-industrial level or 90s level is no more adequate. Now the situation is more aggravated. The global warming is taking place with more degree uncertainty. So the ice are melting, the sea levels are going high. They have went on to the, you know what, 13 to 55 centimeters, the sea level went on high. So therefore, it was agreed based on the identified and quantified research that this should be raised. Now this 2 or 1.5 degrees Celsius will not work. We have to work at a war level, and that too within the limited time framework. We have to reduce more overall environment of the weather to the environment. So this 2 or 1.5 degrees Celsius is no more adequate. So therefore, in continuation of this Durban platform for enhanced action, in 2015, all 196 parties, now it's 197 parties, they have the member of UNFCCC. At in 2015, 196 parties, those they were there, come together for a UN climate change conference in Paris, 30th November, 12th December, and adopted the consensus, the Paris Agreement, aimed at limiting the global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius and pure effort to limit the race to the 1.5 degrees Celsius. And subsequently, the Paris Agreement entered into the force on 4th November 2016, the next year. So this was the first, I tell you, of course, the Kyoto Protocol was a binding for first phase, 12 to 18, but the convention as such was not binding. And it was binding only for the developed countries. Now this Paris Agreement in 2015, launched at the Durban platform, was the first binding agreement. And in the next COP, that is in 4th November 2016, it come into the force. And under this, I tell you the Paris Agreement, the countries has been, either the developed countries or developing countries, they have been left open to fix their target. As I told you that already parallelly there was a dissatisfaction with the developed countries, that their responsibility is more, why they should be put more responsibility, why they see the more burden on them. So therefore, this Paris Agreement was an balancing agreement, balancing binding agreement between developed and developing countries, Annexed 1 and Annexed 2 countries, between at one side, and the non-annexed countries at the another side. And it fixes the, of course it's a binding one, once any country signs it and ratified it, so this agreement will be binding on it. But mind it, it is an optional, I tell you. Even within the UNFCCC framework, it becomes only binding once the member country signs it and ratified it. So therefore, still I tell you, the politics is going on. I tell you, we will talk on the politics behind the climate change also. So let me finish this, the journey of international regulation, basically the UNFCCC framework. So therefore, now on 14th November 2016, the agreement is in force so far. I told you that the recent COP, that is COP 26, that was supposed to take place in UK, could not take place. So it has been postponed for the coming year, 2021. See, apart from this UNFCCC developments, let me talk about this Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. See, this was another initiative under the aegis of the United Nations itself. The specialized agency was WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. See, the difference I tell you, see, you might be getting confusion with regard to the UNFCCC and this IPCC. See, UNFCCC is a platform, is a framework convention of the United Nations to regulate the climate change problem of the developed mechanism and to regulation. That is UNFCCC. And you can see that every year they are coming with different kind of agreements, accord and all that. This was the basically UN body for assessing the science related to the climate change. So the basic difference between this IPCC and UNFCCC is that they both are the under aegis of United Nations framework. Under United Nations. But the thing is that UNFCCC have its different secretariat. It runs under the UN Environment, UNEP program. Its fundings goes on accordingly. However, this IPCC runs through the WMO, the another body of United Nations, World Meteorological, and it's purely a body to do the scientific research with regard to the climate change. Of course, once based on their scientific research, that will be recommended to the UNFCCC secretariat, and accordingly they will prepare the agenda and to regulation. Of course, so it will be a feedback. It will be a, you know what, the scientific input, the technological input in the form of IPCC. You remember that the IPCC under the aegis of the Al Gore was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize also. And see, this IPCC is an intergovernmental panel on climate change. So all the governments, they are the United Nations, the member of all the United Nations, the member countries, the WMO countries, they are part of it. Those governments, they are part of it. They have to be created at their own domestic level. NPCC, National Panel on Climate Change. So India do have this NPCC, and the NPCC has the body responsible in India to submit the international compliances into the UNFCCC and the other international commitments. So every year we submit the report based on the research of NPCCC, and this, we have two obligations. So these two obligations are being, the research are being conducted by the NPCC. See, apart from this, in India we have NEERI also. I could not mention in the slide. That is also doing a lot of good things with regard to the climate change. The few things which I could not talk because that was related with the technology. Of course, when I teach the environmental law, the climate change here at Delhi University, I talked about it because there I have a time CDM and CO2 trading, the clean development mechanism introduced basically at the Kyoto Protocol level, and the carbon trading. So I think I am exceeding my time. If some other day the time will permit, we will talk the technological aspects, the how to reduce the means mitigation, adaptation, how to reduce the greenhouse gases, what are the mechanism, what is the technology for that, and even there is a mechanism under the UNFCCC itself that if a country LDC, they can bargain, they can purchase the carbon of a developed countries, and when the developed countries is selling their carbon to the developing or least developed countries, then they have to give the economic leverage and as well as the economic payback for the same. because I told you there is a carbon limit of every country, that the atmosphere of every member countries is there is a permissible limit of having carbon. So developed countries were already exceeding the carbon limit, whereas on the other hand, certain developing countries, whereas these developing countries has been stuck for their carbon limit, meaning thereby their carbon limit was less than the permissible limit for them. So therefore they have the room, they have the space for accommodating the excess carbon of the developed countries. So therefore the idea was floated and well implemented, this carbon trading also. We have the carbon technology, carbon footprint, this clean development mechanism, and number of things. I will not go to that details because the time doesn't permit. So basically the CDM and CO2 is something but regard to the trading of the carbons, because one is have a better stock for this, they can stock it under the convention. They are they are well below the permissible limit, whereas the developed countries, even including certain developing countries, they have the excess limit. So therefore they can transfer their carbon so that they can come to the level that is permissible under the clean this UNFCCC. Apart from this, there is a commitment of the developed countries to transfer the technologies and number of things. So friends, as in the very beginning I told you, the climate change is a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary problem. So therefore number of things are involved here: the climate engineering, the climate technology, the climate economics, even the financing. I tell you, even the agreement, I could not touch the number of major portions because there are financing, who will finance to whom, how the technology will be transferred. So there are a number of issues. Because of the paucity of the time, it could not be covered. But I think the information that is expected to your level, that is required to you, I try my level best through these slides. I will mail it to the ma'am and to the principal sir, the slides, and that will be circulated to you. And see, the one thing, the last slide which I missed to you is within the 2 minutes, the climate change and this COVID-19 connection. I tell you, because how it is connected to the COVID-19. See, you can see to the website of the WHO. Now the WHO has also reaching to a conclusion that this spread of this coronavirus is have a nexus with the climate change also. You can look it. So they are not denying, I tell you. The politics of the WHO is a different thing, I tell you. But as far as I tell you, India is now the chairman of the WHO. But they have, you can visit, now they are saying that there may be some nexus between the this COVID-19, the coronavirus. They are not denying it. That cannot be denied. Even the United Nations General Secretary has also observed that we have to be tackle the climate change problems to prevent the pandemics like the coronavirus or the SARS. You know that a few years back there was a spread of SARS virus. So there is an established linkage between the climate change and COVID-19, and moreover, friends, the post-recovery challenges. See, of course, I tell you, we have been facing, we have faced already the lockdowns. The state of Assam was also under the national lockdown, and I think still few areas are still in the lockdown, the partial packets, and even throughout the countries, the state of Bihar has been went on to the lockdown for 31st December. Even in the state of UP, they are in every Saturday and Sunday they are putting the lockdowns. So we are still going to the various phases of the lockdowns. But how to do the economic recovery? And of course, during the economic recovery, the environmental measures, the environmental norms are going to be compromised. And it will be a big challenge, not only the government of India, not only us, for other countries also, because we are facing worldwide this problem. How to do the economic recovery, post-COVID recovery, without compromising the commitment and norms that we have made to the international level with regard to the climate change. Because we have to submit the report also in coming COP in the UK in 2021. Apart from that, we have to submit the report to the WMO also. So our NPCC is trying their level best in coordination with the National Disaster Management Authority, that how to how to balance this post-economic recovery without compromising the environmental norms. We have to certainly give the ease to the industries, to the entire economic sector. We have to come out with the bailout packages for the financing institutions. So therefore, I rest my case here with the observation that it will be really a challenge not only for the government of India, but the government of Assam, the other states also, that while easing the lockdowns, while easing the economy, how they are going to be balance this carbon greenhouse emissions, the environmental loss to the factories, to the industries, and even in the state of Assam, where we are facing the double barrel problem in the form of flood as well as this pandemic. So with this, I rest my case here, and I would I certainly accept that I could not touch a few of the areas deliberately, because I only touched that was required for this, the international legal background with regard to this COVID-19. And you have already seen that the submission which we have to make at the international level. So how we are going to do that the time will tell you in the post-recovery environment in the COVID-19, how the government of India is going to react and going to submit it. The time will be the real test. We can now hope at least better hopes. First thing should be on the priority to save the people, to stay safe, to handle this pandemic. Rest things should definitely be on the second priorities. With this, thank you all for kind and patient hearing. Thank you for the NEF authorities to inviting me with this lecture. I over to ma'am for question and answer session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a very informative and compendial session. Can I, sir, now open the platform for the interactive session?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So I'd like to request my co-host, Abhilekha Kakoti, Assistant Professor, NEF Law College, kindly to take the interactive session. Abhilekha, it's over to you now.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, all. Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Sir, the first question from B.V. Verma, he has asked that, is it not a fact that developed countries are putting onus on developing countries to achieve targets without doing it themselves?
Yes, I think that's a wonderful question, I tell you. In fact, throughout my presentation, I highlighted also to, I tell you, see, we have to understand, in fact, I could not talk about the politics behind the climate change, I tell you. See, there are a lot of politics behind the climate change also. So things, see, we have UNFCCC, even behind the UNFCCC, there are a number of politics. So, as very rightly pointed out the person who has asked the question, that you can see what happened in the Bali Action Plan, why it was needed, I tell you. Why we needed Bali Action Plan, why even the Canada and the UK, they have out of this Kyoto Protocol. So of course, see, I tell you, whereas the basic premise of UNFCCC is that the developed countries we have all common responsibility, but they have to take the lead, because they are well equipped with the technology, they are well equipped with the engineering, they are well equipped with the economics. So see, like the WTO, I tell you, see, you try to understand, you just compare the ongoing debate in UNFCCC as well as parallelly the trade. So when the trade comes, I tell you, they talk in a different way, in a different tone, I tell you. They are ready to have the common but differentiated responsibility. But when it comes to the environment, when it comes to the climate change, they are, though the agreement is specific, but they take the different argument. They said, no, it should be the equal responsibility. Why we should only be overburdened with this? So basically, this approach is really, I tell you, but see, exceptions are all, see, this is not only the things, there are a number of good developed countries, they are doing very well. They are cooperating with other things. The examples are there. The point cut is that to this extent, the question is very pertinent on this. I just given you the examples, the WTO as well as the UNFCCC, the trade and environment. So therefore, I tell you, the agencies are doing the research, in Delhi University also we are doing a supervising number of PhD thesis and dissertation, that the ongoing debate on the climate change and the trade, the environment and trade. So you will see the countries will be having a different argument when they come at the platform of a trade negotiations, and they will have a different arguments when they will come at the platform of the climate change and the environment. So you all, I think, might have been read day before yesterday, our concerned minister, Honorable Sri Piyush Goyal ji, announced that the India has signed the trade deal with the USA and UK also, and we are yet to be finalized the number of FTAs with the number of countries. So see, ultimately we are in a cosmopolitan environment, so trade is really important, I tell you. So try to understand the official stand of the government of India also. See, we cannot overlook trade also at the cost of the environment also. I do agree, and I am a man firm believer that the climate and environment should not be compromised. But considering and keeping in mind the typical interest of India, I tell you, you see the climate clauses, the climate change clauses are also, the environmental clauses are also being now the part of the trade agreements also. And that's why I must share, and we should put forward this, that it was a part of the recent deal of the India-UK trade deal. So of course the developed countries are shifting their liabilities to, so far as the environmental responsibilities are concerned, the climate change responsibilities are concerned, to the developing countries. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is from Malem Mangal. He has asked that in the wake of the central government's unwillingness to go for mandatory EIA in various development projects in India, and especially in Northeast region, how do you see the challenges of climate changes due to unsustainable development projects pursued by the state and its multinational corporations? How do you address these challenges?
Yes, Mangal, see, who asked us, you have really raised a question that was hitting in my mind, I tell you. See, the environmental impact assessment, I tell you, from this environmental audits also, I tell you. And see, you look onto the corporate social responsibility also in this regard, I tell you. Of course, that had in a different prospects. But I tell you, the point is that, see, specifically in the Northeast region, where when you are going to establish any specific setup or any business setup, I tell you, you have to face number of problems. So I was addressing a gathering of entrepreneurs as well as the, industrialists. So they were, few industries, those they are working in the hilly areas. So, and even in odd situations. See, this environmental impact assessment should be the mandatory criteria, I tell you. But that at the same time, I think we should be with the well-recognized exceptions too. Because many a time, I tell you, and see, the technology which we have, I tell you, is also not very sure that what will be the impact of a particular project over an environment. See, before you are getting the license, any industry or industries want to set up a particular project to anywhere. So statutorily, they are required to submit the environmental impact assessment, that what will be the impact of my project overall over the environment, and accordingly to the assessment, a particular amount has been reserved in case it basically was needed also in case of India because of this Bhopal tragedy. You all know that, see, the compensation amount the company left and all this, what happened, I don't want to go to that detail. The point is that this environmental impact assessments have its own objective. And the objective is that, see, every industry before establishment, before getting the license to go for work to start the manufacturing, they have to be submit this report. And of course, not only recently, even there are specific criteria of the industries that are exempted even from EIA. And of course, see, we have to be, I'm again repeating the term, of course, the development should be there, but not at the cost of environment. So that is why we have come with the concept called sustainable development, a development which can sustain the environment as the economic development also. But the main time I tell you, see, we have to be look the picture from overall perspective. Now we are going to be do the COVID-19 post economic recovery. So just think the problem which our industries are facing also. So you cannot put the things at the risk, I tell you. Of course, I am time and again saying that the environmental impact assessment should be a mandatory criteria, and it is the mandatory criteria with certain exceptions. And I do agree that the development should be such that should be a sustainable development. But at the same time, we have to be cautious about, and we should be appreciate the decision, the licensing of the government of India for various projects, and even the licensing of the various projects by the state of Assam also, in the light of the specific situations we are facing after the COVID-19, how to recover the economy, how to put the economy on track. So the bailout packages, we have to provide the environmental lease, we have to provide the relaxation from the labor laws, we have to provide them the relaxation from the environmental norms, because we are unfortunately in a situation where we have to do the compromises. But of course, I do agree that the compromise should not be at the level that should be really deteriorating to the environment, to the climate change, and to an extent that is non-sustainable. So leverage should not be given, the trade leverage should not be given, the licensing should not be relaxed to an extent that is unsustainable for the environment. Yes.
Okay, sir. The next question is from Albert. He has asked, who should pay for the climate change? Can developing country like India sustain without carbon emissions limit at the moment?
No. See, I think your question, I have a two part. First part is that who should pay for the climate change?
Yes.
So you are talking in this regard of the developed and developing countries. See, I do agree. I tell you the problem, basically the climate change problem is basically generated because of the rapid, unregulated, unsustainable economic development, establishment of industries and all in the developed countries. They are developed because they have done the development in an unregulated, unsustainable manner and all that. So to that extent, I do agree that this problem is imposed by them. The air, the atmosphere, the water, the overall, the temperature is something we cannot regulate. If one country is doing wrong, then the other countries, the entire part of the globe will be having the adverse impacts of it. So I do agree that the problem basically has been originated by the developed countries. They are unregulated, and now they are expecting, I tell you, the current situation is now they are expecting that the developing countries and LDCs should be contribute to them. That is basically a very adverse situation, I tell you. So I do agree to this extent that the developed countries are in fact are more, rather than they are in a very higher degree responsible for this problem in compared to the developing as well as LDCs. And in fact, they should come with the various packages, the technologies transfer, easing it, the even carbon trading and all that. And the next part I hope was with regard to the specific, that how India is going to be come up. So as I mentioned you earlier, see, India cannot be an exception. Try to understand one thing also, though either under the trade negotiations or under the this environmental negotiations, we are under the category of developing countries. But see, the measurement of a status of a country on economic criteria on a based on economic environmental criteria may be different. So India is enjoying number of benefits under the non-binding agreements, but at the same time we are not only enjoying, I tell you, I told you earlier also that on certain aspects we are fulfilling the commitments, environmental commitments, far better than the developed countries. Of course, because of the lack of the technology and the kind of large population we have the large area to manage. We have the, 29 states with 8 UTs. We have to be managed with different climate, with different geographical conditions. So even if I tell you, we have the resources, we have to relax these things. So I do agree that we requires more activeness on this part, but at the same time, we are also the sufferer of this COVID-19 pandemic. So therefore, see, the entire state government and entire the the central government, their decisions, the stake of industrialists, stakes of the environment should be in a balanced manner, and we are complying with the commitments, international agreement. So I hope so that India will definitely come with the better bailout packages, better management and all. So that's what I can right now say. And of course, the developing and developed countries, their responsibility. Yes.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, it's from Roshan Rahman. He has asked, since United States under Trump administration left the Paris Climate Agreement, will it impact this agreement further?
Yes, ma'am. Will this agreement
Will it impact this agreement further?
Yes, of course, ma'am. I tell you. See, so far as Paris agreements are concerned, I tell you the best thing in this agreement. See, I tell you, my student was asking when I was teaching this in the final year. We have the environmental law and we have the separate study topic of the climate change. So one student asked this very wonderful question, sir. See, what are the added advantages of this Paris agreement over the Kyoto Protocol and the ongoing UNF Secretary Bali action plans and all this? So the one I tell you basic thing which and the best thing in Paris agreement I tell you is that it gives the countries, see, the UNFCCC secretary is not fixing. The members reaching at the consensus at the COP is not fixing. They are giving the liberty to the national country, irrespective of their economy, depending upon their capabilities and the economic status, to fix their own targets for coming years and then submit the reports. Let the COP be and the UNFCCC it at coming meetings to their compliance to it. So therefore, it is something like I tell you, see, is there any limit fixed by authority? And the persons who are supposed to comply is, they are saying we are not able to do it. So now the authority has given this relaxation. You fix your own limits and come up with the own reports. So in that aspect, I tell you, this is the room given by the Paris Agreement, and this is why I tell you, at the Paris, the entire international community has been reached to an extent of so far as the banding patterns are concerned and the other things, the Paris Agreement is in a better advanced stage, in a better form, and in a form that is mutually agreed by all the countries or the maximum countries, and it creates the win-win situation for developed countries as well as developing countries and LDCs countries. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like the participants, if they are having any question, they can put their question in the chat box or they can ask.
Yes, I will be more happy if they will unmute themselves and ask the question directly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have one question. May I put a question?
Sure, sir.
Hello.
Sure, sir. My pleasure.
So thank you for your very valued, informative, excellent lecture. So we have learned many things, Dr. Tripathi. Tripathi means probably you are expert of three parts. In Assamese, part means relation.
So,
And
yes, sir. My pleasure.
yes, yes. So what we have got today, what we have learned from you, three lessons we have got, learned. Three C's. One C is the climate. Second C is the changes. Changes already we have. Changes going to be occurred. and another C is challenge. 3 C's. 1 C is climate, second C is changes going to be occurred, and third C is challenges. And of course, fourth factor is also there. There's a compromise. Am I wrong? Am I right? Dr.
No, sir,
Tripathi?
you are very much right.
Yes, yes. So far we know that so far the environmental law is concerned, that we have one concept that that the plants are the producers and man and animals are the consumers and the microorganisms are the reducer. We have concept, but we know that the microorganisms are the reducer. Now we are very scared of this microorganism because this COVID-19 is spread across the world. You have stopped the activities of the world. So the my question is, as I have already said, that the rule of law means the rule of life, and the rule of life means the rule of nature. So first of all, this should be the first criteria that we have to follow the rule of the nature. We have to follow the natural. We have to go with the nature. So the first thing is that first motto is we have to protect our Mother Earth. Now, do you think that after this experience, COVID-19 experience, do you think that we need one more summit? It will not be World Summit. It will be Human Summit. After COVID-19, after this episode of the COVID-19, we need one new norm. Which new norm? A world summit, a human summit of new norm, where we can protect our arts without any compromise. That's my simple question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very, very rightly pointed out, sir. In fact, I am very thankful for this. And in fact, what you have said exactly was said the day before by a very learned professor. That see, after COVID-19, when we are going to be in a normal stage, see, or even before that, we need a different kinds of, the way rule of nature has shown its power, we need a different kind of, rules and regulations. The rule of law has its own limitations. So now the the way rule of nature has shown its power, we have to reconceptualize entire, the regulation system, I tell you, and specifically the environmental norms, I tell you. See, as I mentioned in my lecture, of course, the entire COVID pandemic started from, you may say that it was a human intervention from a lab of Wuhan and all that. But of course, see, I tell you, the WHO has accepted it also that there is a connectivity with the climate change, see, with the nature. So to that extent, sir, you are very right that the prime focus should be the protection of Mother Nature, and the entire regulation should be reoriented. Ideas in a different words that are said by my colleague at Delhi University. What he was saying, I tell you, sir, the same thing. The Mother Earth can satisfy the need, but not the greed. See,
right.
That is why the problem is started there. I tell you, if you all, I think we are having a lot of young generations with us. You think that what we are consuming is more than what we require exactly. People are having more than 2 to 3 cars at their home. We are purchasing the clothes even without knowing that. See, we wear the t-shirt once in a month and then the turns come out on. See, therefore, see, our consumption pattern should also be regulated, I tell you. See, I am not saying that the choices should be limits. There should be anything, but see, we have to regulate our consumption pattern also. And see, only alone the government, the state, the legal authorities, see, we are facing a problem where they alone cannot do anything. They all require, I tell you, we, with the citizen of India, we, the citizen of world, I tell you, the world citizen, we do owe the responsibility. We have to change our consuming pattern and see the entire policy framing, the entire law framing, the entire rule of law should be reoriented towards the putting the Mother Earth, putting the environment, putting the climate at their first priority. I do agree on this part, sir. But at the same time, I would say that the policy makers, the government, the either the federal structure or the unitary structure, are we cannot leave everything on the state government. Being a responsible citizen, we also owe fundamental duties in our constitution. So we have the duty towards the nature, we have the duty towards the other colleagues, we have duty towards the, you know what, the rivers, the lakes, the wildlife, the all. So therefore we have to change our economic pattern, we have to change our consuming pattern. And see, we have to see, when you are not even, you are complying with the norms, complying with the lockdown guidelines,